and different. Let's see, get the thing up.
Let me take it off. This is the theme tune.
Hello, and welcome to the New Athens live stream from the bunker. Hello, I'm Laurenzo Mefsut, founder of the New Athens, the blockchain think tank. I'm here tonight with our first very special guest, Danny Shine of the Social Experimentalist YouTube channel, civil liberties pirate, campaigning for all our freedoms in the world.
Is that right? Is that what I am?
That's kind of my first take from having a look at the channel.
Well, for starters, let's just make sure that you are 2 meters away from me. I've got my laser.
Yes. We're no longer.
That's good. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So now we're in sequence.
And secondly, you might want to check up with me first before you call me something. That's all.
That was my impression. Well, I'm really keen to hear about your experience and moving around the world and seeing how things are out in the streets. I know that it's been a very dark time, and I think we're heading into more light now and a little bit more happiness in the world. I've been in Regent's Park today, walking through, and people seem to be using the park. They're not scared or paranoid. They're just kind of, out in the sunshine, getting their vitamin D, and generally having a more pleasant time than I've seen in public in the past few weeks. I don't know if you've seen that yourself.
Well, firstly, I must say I have to admit to you that since COVID and before, I was always very suspicious of everyone, and I am suspicious of why you would be interested in asking me any questions at all about anything. So I don't know what's really going on here. What would drive you to to go to all this trouble to find out some opinions of some strange man who goes on a megaphone and annoys people?
I've followed for a long time a kind of genre on YouTube, which I don't know whether you would put yourself in that genre, but of people who challenge the way that common law is enforced by the police or not, and the ability of people to mind their own business and do their own thing, whether it's talking on a loudhailer about eating meat in KFC, and having a discussion. And I think you like to have very public discussions of some interesting topics, and so do we here. That's kind of what we're about.
Fair enough.
And so what we're hoping to do is provide a forum for people outside of the mainstream media, outside this kind of lockstep, all together media sequence, which I think we'll address a bit in a while. And so I wanted to meet you and thank you for what you're doing, firstly, because I think it's really important that we test the boundaries of our rights and liberties, and that we assert those independently of being told we can. Because I think a lot of people, their default position, because they've got busy lives and they've got to make ends meet, they've got to keep food on the table. They don't necessarily have time or energy or the mental space to then do what people like perhaps you can do, which is to make sure that that public square doesn't lose any territory. Doesn't have encroachments.
I can't do that. Please don't kid yourself. I cannot do that.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that a YouTube channel or your campaigns are necessarily the only thing or a sufficient condition for that to happen. But I think that even that happening at all and your energy going into that is a very positive thing.
Oh, thank you. I must just go back to warn your viewers that that it's taken me quite a long time to realize that I really don't know what I'm talking about.
We discussed this the other day.
And therefore, this is what I was saying sort of before, I think you should question what you're doing watching this. There's so many other things that you could be doing. Why are you watching this? So I'm skeptical about you. I don't really know anything about you. I've heard what you've had to say. I can see how you're dressed. I like the little Bitcoin badge, you know. And therefore, what I'm going to be doing in this particular, I don't know what you'd call this conversation, is I'm going to be inviting the audience to join me in several pauses before I answer questions, because this is going out live and I can't edit out the bits that I don't want people to see. And there are lots of things that I don't want people to see.
I know there's kind of cameras on us and we're going out live, and we don't have like a 1 minute kind of buffer of time where we can like play around and Oliver can change what happens. So it is kind of like a performance art thing, in terms of like, we're here now, we're having a conversation, we don't know one another personally.
No.
And that, although intriguing, does have its own problems. Not necessarily problems, but concerns that surround that. And I understand you've come here. It's a time when people are quite scared to go places, and it's very good that you've come here in person rather than having to go on video link, which is kind of we can't look one another in the eye.
Yes, I know, and isn't it great? There's a police officer informed me the other day actually that our work, we are key workers.
Yes.
Yes, and which is great, because it seems that key workers and police officers don't seem to be dying of this.
No, I know. It's astonishing really, that the way that the world has turned on its head. And I was looking at some of Boris Johnson's very confused speeches.
Yes.
And actually tuned into something that I think is there, which is he's speaking to two levels of people. So there's the middle class, work from home, work from a workstation, so you can be in the internet, so you can stay behind closed doors, enclosed in your box. And actually, everyone without a degree, everyone who does real work with their hands in the world, they're just continuing. Right. The trains are running, the tubes are running, the buses are running, the rubbish is being collected.
Right.
The warehouses are shipping logistically all the food and medical supplies around. These people can't cower in their homes, and they're not allowed to, and they wouldn't do anyway, because they want to get on with their life. And so you've got this kind of inversion of, I don't know if you followed some of the thinking. Andrew Yang, especially in the Democratic primaries in America, was running on the basis. Oh, he's a tech guy, and he was running on the basis of universal basic income.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, I did hear about it.
That with quantitative easing and with the death of the consumer economy and with the death of manufacturing in the West, we create the money to give to people so they can spend $5 in Starbucks and not have to like rethink the consumer economy, just give the money in, and then people will be losing their jobs apparently in the West because of automation, because of AI, and because of mechanization of factories and logistics and because of this and so on. But what I found really interesting, we addressed it last time, was it's entirely inverted. What the concept of UBI, universal basic income, was that it would be the Western working class that would be deleted from having a point into their lives. They would be sort of this lost generation. And in fact, with this COVID 1984 scenario, like, it's entirely inverted, because it's the office workers that are superfluous. Like, they're entirely superfluous. They don't need to be in the world. Everything still runs. You can just scrape off, even down to like restaurants, hotels, travel, blah, blah, blah. You can scrape off this consumer economy and the kind of office work economy, and get down to the bare bones of our society and our civilization. And it's actually, making sure the buses are running, making sure the bins are cleaned, making sure the streets are swept, and making sure there's food on the shelves.
Right.
Or in delivery. And so this key worker thing is kind of an interesting middle ground, because the BBC are going to work, Parliament are going to work, so the people have nominated themselves as key workers. Like, we have like the guys in the warehouse, and we need the BBC. Like, that's also in and the people in hospitals. That's obviously key. But the BBC and the civil service, and they need to get on with shit. And so then you have this lockstep. I mean, I'll try and find the link and send it to you, Oliver. It was up thread a bit. But in the meantime, how have you found the policing of the the lockdown? Because I know you've
So-
been out and about.
So this is the bit and this technique. I really, I can tell you that it makes a big difference to my life when I remember to use it, which is not often, especially in the house, which is where I need to use it the most. But what I'd like to invite everyone to do is to just count to 30 and contemplate for yourselves, how has the policing been for you during this situation?
Set the timer. Is laser guided?
No.
Well, starting with you, Danny.
Yeah.
I think you've been on the front line, the home guard.
I mean, the thing is, for me, it's, you know, how has the policing been in this situation? The problem with the situation is that it's only made real by our thinking, right? Which is the whole of this reality is only made real by our thinking. Yeah. So money is only made real by our thinking.
Absolutely.
Right. And so is seems like to me like the fear of this COVID-19 is that's what's spreading. Yeah. It's an illness.
More than the disease.
It's an illness. It's a disease.
And it's affected
there are
more
lots.
people.
There are
Venn
lots
diagram
and
is
lots
wider.
and lots of people. Lots and lots of illnesses. There's thousands of them.
Yeah.
Thousands. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know.
We looked at the very sad statistics of the deaths in English hospitals.
Yeah.
To May the 5th, and of the
Why are they sad statistics? You're saying they're sad, but
they're sad.
Just
They were sad.
From. What's sad about them?
So of the COVID-19 death certificates,
Yeah.
In under 40 age category, there were 155 people. There were 11 people from 0 to 19 years of age.
Yeah.
Who died of a COVID-related death certificate, and in English hospitals, and
how many of those had underlying conditions?
I'm not clear. That
Right.
wasn't part of that
Yeah.
table. However, the from 19 to 39 there were 155.
Yeah.
So it's like 166 overall, 166 people. That's a tragic plane crash.
Right.
Of under 40s in the world.
Okay.
Sorry, in Britain.
Okay.
And like the consequence of that
Yes.
in the airline industry is not that all planes are grounded that day. It's not that all planes are grounded for a month. There's no investigation that stops the air industry until we work out how not to crash a plane of 160 people. Instead, and there's certainly no close down of the whole of the civilization until we work that out. And you have people in power saying, well, not the new normal is this until there's a vaccine, which may never come. You know, and so you've got then this sad 160 tragedy of young people, but now all the young people are locked up because these 166 have died under 40 years old. People don't get it. You know, it's not a big cause of death.
No.
And as you say, there may be a lot of underlying conditions in that total. But I just got
but what I wanted to say, just get back to what I wanted to say is that it's the way it's thinking about it incessantly, and the way I think about it, right? That is what's causing all the fear. So my hobby, if you like, or my speciality, I'm basically only an expert in two things. One is creating disruption in public spaces, and maybe also in general. And
that's what I want to learn at your feet.
And the other thing is choosing which songs to play, and managing live music at people's weddings.
Yeah,
I'm an expert on that, and unfortunately nothing else. So
one of those things is still going, the other one's not.
Correct.
And you're a key worker.
That's right. So my preferred method of dealing with all of this is humor, and laughing at it and mocking at it, because the problem is that we're taking it all seriously, but actually when you take a step right back, you think like, oh my God, you've got to laugh at that. It's hilarious. 2 meters. And then you make fun of the 2 meters. So for
like
example,
those 2 cops in the park.
Yeah.
Who'd gone over to the poor little couple and their kid who were playing, and you had the pan around and there was nobody there, and they inserted themselves into this bucolic family scene, and like there's that, oh, we don't know why we're doing it, but we're just doing it because it's there, you know. And then you come up, and then you've added the 5th this disruptive element, and they just don't have any interrogation of what they've gone over to these poor people to bother them about, and possibly give them the disease.
Exactly.
It's like, you know, is it Werner Heisenberg who said that, you know, when you measure a system by shining light on a light particle, you change the energy. So by looking at it, you've changed the system.
Right.
So by those police entering into they added the COVID problem into that nice little scene of the grassland. And then so
I've been out there doing that, you know, a lot, as much as I can.
I can see the tan.
Yeah. And so
maybe tanning will be, maybe having a tan will soon be like a mark of rebellion. Yeah, I mean, I where 2 or 3 of us ye shall meet, I will be among you. You know, it's Matthew 18:20 there's become this. It's almost as if people who meet. Is it like the Christians in the Rome? You know, it's like where 2 or 3 of you shall meet, I will be with thee. You know, is it become like we've got to have a fish sign on the wall? This is a house where people are allowed to be.
No, it's okay. No, because before the end of the show, if you wouldn't mind just getting me a little wipe. If I wipe the table, then I'm a cleaner.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And I can give you a little bit of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then you can be yeah. Matt Hancock on Nick Fry. That was so funny. I mean, he's not even the head prefect. David Cameron tried to be the head boy of Britain. Now, come on, chaps. You know, but it's like he's the whole. Matt Hancock is like the hall monitor or the head of house. He's like one step down in the little prefect hierarchy, and he gets this shrill little kind of clenching that he does. And then Nick Ferrari said, well, yes, and you're allowed to employ cleaners in your house and au pairs.
Yes.
So can you employ your mother-in-law
yes.
as an au pair? No, that's not allowed. No. You know, and it was the level of personal. It's like when young teachers at school who really wanted lickspittle get in with a headmaster.
Yeah.
They'd always like go for your hair or your like tie.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're doing it wrong, and or that way you were walking in the corridor, and like you could wind them up because you could tell they had taken on the rules and made them personal. They'd made it a personal vendetta that they need to see the hair the right way. They need to see the tie the right way. And you can really get to them because they think that lickspittle petty rule enforcement will like get them up the hierarchy. And so and with their betters. And so they're shitting on you, you know, the little people that they'll sort of climb. And you can see that in Hancock and his kind of shrill clench. Like.
Well, you know, we're here as journalists. I will do some cleaning.
Yes.
Before this ends.
Yes.
If you don't, I don't even mind looking after a child for just 5 minutes. Dan. Yeah, I'll look after Dan.
He's a graduate of the LSE, but he was a child recently.
Well, probably still is.
I'm probably the most childish person.
Yeah. So my approach is to make fun of it as much as possible and play with it as much as possible.
Because you know, it is a joke. The level of rule making about the masks,
right,
and about the distancing, and look, when 2 people meet and neither of them is diseased, neither of them can infect one another. So if you and I don't have the disease, then there's no problem with our being together. And so,
but what if what if one of us has got the disease, we just don't know it yet?
But the what if is, as what Lord Sumption was saying the other day, it's like that's down to personal risk profile that you're willing to go through in life.
Right.
Yeah, you can go to the theatre.
Right.
knowing that you might spread it and be spread too.
Right.
And all the other people have also independently made that decision to be there.
Right.
And the ones who aren't are in their houses.
Right.
I mean, Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan the other day, and they were discussing it. The biggest thing on the internet.
Look, you see, my approach to it is A, not to take it all too seriously. B, I literally have not got a clue what's going on. C, I don't know if anybody has got a clue what's going on. And then, like, having said that, it seems to me that I think the lockdown, or whatever you want to call it, is
cockdown. Cockdown.
Well, whatever. I think that I think that people.
We call it the lockup.
How can I say this without? I mean, I always hope for people to at least someone to unsubscribe from my channel from every film I make.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But I mean, I genuinely think that we deserve to be locked up, all of us, right? Including myself, right? We deserve to be locked up because we are the problem. It's not the politicians that are the problem. It's not the corporations that are the problem.
Really?
No,
okay.
We are the problem. We are an ongoing problem, and we keep on replicating ourselves for no good reason.
So we're not the problem. The selfish gene is the problem.
Well, yes, the selfish gene is the problem. Yeah, absolutely. And we are. Is
that true of humans,
in a way, we are, victims of the selfish gene.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. And so, we were discussing this the other day very briefly on the phone, and my father was an atheist. My late father was an atheist, and he read me when I was like 8 years old. We'd lie in bed together on a Sunday morning, and he'd read me the Selfish Gene, and I'd read him a chapter. He'd read me a chapter.
Wow! When you were 8,
as a kind of Sunday sermon, like because he really got into it, and I really got into it. We started reading Darwin and Dawkins and so on, and So I mean, the last chapter of the Selfish Gene, Dawkins says humans can be liberated from the selfish gene game because you can choose to live your genes and not replicate them. You don't need to submit to the replication game. And one of the unique things about humans is that our self-consciousness has liberated us from needing to just do instinct. I mean, all of civilization is the antithesis of instinct.
Right.
In terms of, what is instinct? Bash something on the head, eat it, defend the territory,
right.
Make sure nobody comes to the door and spreads disease. So Dawkins was saying that we can liberate ourselves. Well, we can not necessarily have to, but the potential that's there, that we can choose to reproduce or not to, is a kind of emancipation from everything eating everything forever, which is the way of all flesh, like nature red in tooth and claw. And so that always struck me. And I don't have any children as far as I know. Do you have any children?
I have 3.
Ah, okay. So I don't have any children as far as I know. But I always took that last chapter to heart because I read it very young and it was like part of my formation. And so I always took that to heart and said, well, surely you should live your genes as a fuck you to the principle of natural selection. Everything, eating everything. I mean, you can see a beautiful garden, right? But if you look in detail, it's like a praying mantis.
Ugly.
Like, did you see the other thing my father did was he recorded me Life on Earth 1979 on video cassette tape off channel off the BBC Two in like 1991, and so I saw that when I was young. And the image that really stuck with me was there's a praying mantis, and in facing the lens, and then also facing the lens is a locust. And the praying mantis is eating the back of the locust while he's kind of struggling a bit with it. He's lost his back legs by now, so he's not getting away. So he's like being consumed into this proboscis. What really struck me is the poetry of that moment, and the tragic, dark poetry of that moment was the face of the locust. You can kind of see confused. I mean, okay, it's not that expressive, unlike us, but you kind of see the confusion of my life is in the process of, okay, it's not probably cognition, but my life is in the process of ending. It's never happened to me before, it'll never happen to me again. Like, I'm now leaving into the maw of this predator, and like I'm now experiencing what it's like to be eaten alive from the back to the front. So I can still feel what's going on. And that sort of struck me about gardens and sort of wildlife,
Amazing. It's
and
amazing
and
to realize that when you're so young.
Yeah,
it's a very, very, very unusual realization, because we are fed all this wonderful things about nature, and it's so beautiful. And
let nature be your teacher. Well, if nature's your teacher, everyone else is well. Certainly,
exactly.
you're going to be eating shit, just carving carnage through the world. Let nature be your teacher. I don't think that's what Wordsworth meant.
Eating people alive,
yes,
from the back
to
forward.
The front.
You know what I mean?
So you can see what's going on here. Oh no. So does that struck me, and then and so then I thought for a while I was an antinatalist. I read Schopenhauer and kind of Nietzsche, and I thought, oh, that makes, when I was about sort of 15, that kind of makes sense, but I put a thread up about, I will talk about it in a bit, maybe the what we've called tonight's episode the Great 2020 Body Snatch.
Right.
So 2 nights ago, we all became organ donors, unless we opted out. And we opted out yesterday, my mother and I, and my artist, who's maybe coming later. You got to go.
I mean, it's a little bit pretentious. I mean, not pretentious, it's presumptuous that anybody would want any of your organs.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got to say that you're like a drug addict. Like, you make sure the NHS knows that you live really rough. Chemsex orgies. I shoot up every weekend. No, I'm trash.
You wouldn't want my stuff.
I'm trash inside. Like, it's alcohol. It's got the tumors. It's bad. It's all rotting. You don't want this. Let me live to 80, please. Young people are going to become harvested. But what you said just struck me with some of the comments I had from putting it on our Facebook group, the New Earthers Facebook group yesterday. Was oh god, I've forgotten the point because we were laughing.
Well, what didn't they ask you? Like, what would you do if you needed an organ? Yes.
So if you're not willing to donate organs, are you going to? This is our friend Oliver, friend of the show. He reads right for Pravda. He makes whiskey now, and he said, okay, is there a moral principle in saying, well, if you're not willing to give your organs, should you then not disavow and say, I wouldn't receive them?
That's fair enough. I think that's fair enough. Actually.
Okay. I mean, that's an interesting position.
I think.
I'd be willing.
I'd be willing.
I'd sign up to that,
because I don't really. I'm not sure if I want to get to the stage of like that.
I'd want to sign up for that if I could rely on that impartiality, not coming into anyone's decision. They're blind to my organ donor or not status. Until the end of life care, and then he's a donor. It says on the website, we'll have a look, but it says on the website that that I was using yesterday, the NHS organ donor website, which has now become. I called them up. This guy was saying we had loads of calls, like the people saying we're using the site now because the site has existed, but now it's got this traffic from this one Metro article that I saw that came out, and people were calling me on the 20th and said, do you know you're an organ donor? I said, yeah, I'm going to address it on the show. It says you can still opt out is the tag. That's still, it depends how you hear it in your mind's ear. Like, there will be a time when you can no longer. Like, speak now, forever hold your peace. One. You're a wedding guy.
You can still
you can still, like, it's a very sinister still. And the other line.
No, but you could see that as like maybe they're trying to persuade people to just get on with opting out.
Get put the yellow star on and put yourself in the database. Like, I shouldn't be in a database. I don't want to be in a database to say, oh, I'm not a serf.
Right.
And I don't rent my body from the state, and then I'll leave. There's the rental agreement says you can't do drugs. You can't, like, you've got to keep your organs fresh in case, like, you're going to go back. When you leave the property, leave it as you found it. Make sure that the organs are fresh, and because you now have a lease agreement with the government for your own body. One of the respondents on our little Facebook debate said, "How dare you deprive the state of medical resources?" And I said, I'm not depriving the state of medical resources. My body's not made of medical resources. My body's made of my organs. And I'm not depriving anything. I'm going back to how it was the night before last, when I was sleeping at midnight. Actually, I probably didn't sleep at midnight. I was sleeping at midnight, and then suddenly I became property of the state, and I consent. Is it you will be deemed to have consented? Is the term? You will be deemed to have consented on the night of the 19th of May 2020 towards the 20th, though midnight. I assume it's like starts at midnight.
What bunch of crackpots.
Like every contract you go into, if we treat with one another, if we go into about this stuff, like if we treat with one another, if we go into a contract, it's like open, above board. We like to work out the terms. If we're keeping stuff from one another, the contract's void.
Right.
It doesn't work because we haven't had a valid consent to deal with one another on a reasonable basis. Yeah. And then we've got this term.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? It's like the Chinese do it, but I think they do it more. They do it more like just openly, don't they?
But yeah, well, the social credit system is now, it's in your phone. You can't deregister your phone. That number is with you for life. That's not a burner phone. That's a smartphone.
What's this?
This is Chinese social credit system.
Yeah.
So they've created like the inverse of blockchain.
Yeah.
They've turned it on it because blockchain can be totally private or totally transparent. Two sides of the same Bitcoin. You can either see where all the transactions have gone in the Merkle tree, or you've got privacy because there's a gap, an air gap between your personal identity and your wallet address.
Yes.
And so it has this sort of two-facedness of being perfectly open and also perfectly private. It's the ultimate form of secret ballot. So you can't be nobbled when you go to the ballot box in the blockchain world. The theory goes, whether that's occurred is a different conversation. But contracts, open contracts. So the Chinese have created this inverted system. So blockchain, you can create your own crypto, you start your own project, you start your startup, you fund it through a currency. You can then get a crowd of people who follow your view, whether it's antinatalism, whether it's vegetarianism. We'll talk about vegetarianism in a minute. You can then get those people to, in good faith, know what you're doing, back it without the interference of VCs or banks or all these financial intermediaries or even the central bank. And you create your currency, you create your nation, you create your decentralized nation in the internet of all the people who are like you and believe things that you believe and are interested in what your project is. And that's a very liberty-seeking and liberty-flourishing activity. But if you look through the other end of the telescope, you get the Chinese social credit system, which is using the same blockchain-like system for total surveillance and total control.
Yeah.
And it's odd that it uses that inversion. And that's what we're seeing today. And this is what I wanted to discuss with you and your insight, because you see it on the ground. And we see it through blockchain in kind of the tech lobbying politics space and so on, talking to people and getting their views. But you see it like in the wild, out in the wild, with people who aren't necessarily in this conversation yet, and who haven't got coins, who don't have a wallet, who don't even care about Bitcoin or any of the concepts behind it, or how it could help to preserve the kinds of freedoms that you campaign for on the ground. And so it's kind of secretly coming across now that the Chinese social credit system is being injected into the Western world through this pandemic, through this COVID-1984 scenario, because now we're getting the apps, the tracing apps, which take your phone and then register where you go.
Yeah.
And in China, there's this traffic light system. Red, you got to stay indoors. Yellow, you've kind of at risk of having been in contact with somebody. And green, you can get a train ticket and you can go somewhere. Yeah. And we're heading in that way.
I'm thinking of applying myself
as a tracer.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Apparently you get minimum wage and you could become another kind of key worker.
That's good. My wife's always...
Then you can employ your mother-in-law in your house
as a cleaner
or au pair.
Indeed.
Yeah, no, that will be interesting actually to get inside that honeycomb and see what it actually is. Although I presume they vet people. I don't presume they want, jolly YouTube.
Depends how they vet them. It depends how they vet them,
Yeah, maybe they think they'll be able to convert you to the dark side.
They'll probably Google me. That's the problem.
A shining light in the darkness.
Yeah.
Diogenes walking around in the daytime with a lantern saying, "I'm looking for a wise man." That could be your in a park, with some police community support officers supporting. You could be your like arms. You could have we looked into actually the other day. The one way to get rid of the House of Lords is for everyone to become a lord, and so we found this with this site where you could buy 1 square foot of Scotland land, and you can then call yourself a lord and go into the College of Arms and get your arms, and then you can't join the House of Lords because they got rid of hereditary peers. But the one way to get rid of them, and this sign on the dole, £300 at the door down at Palace of Westminster, is for everyone to become a lord. It costs $49.50 online. We'll find the link in a bit. So the only way is to dilute is to quantitatively ease lords. It's dilute the currency. And so where were we going with that? Contact tracers, vetting. Yes. Oh yeah, so your arms could be support 2 police community support officers. Could be like the lion and the unicorn, and then Diogenes could be your symbol. No. So creating disruption in public spaces.
Yeah.
How has that been? Because I've seen all of your recent COVID 1984 period videos and some of the other ones. Has there been a difference in the way that you've been treated by the authorities now versus when you were troublemaking and disrupting before? Has there been a different feeling or different interactions? I know some of them know who you are now.
Yeah.
And so there's a sort of meta game of, I know you, do you remember me kind of thing. But yeah, has there been a difference in feeling over now versus before?
As I say, I try to make it funny, and so there's so much available material now.
Yes,
it's difficult to know what to do first, really.
Sweet shop.
Where to go first?
Yes.
I'd love to do a tour. Maybe a beach tour. That would be nice. Yeah, spend some time on the beaches.
There's that woman on BBC News the other day who said, I drove an hour and a half to the beach, but I'm annoyed that everyone else did too.
Yeah.
And it feels like being in Tesco. Which I saw that the Daily Fail was screaming about. How dare she? And all the sort of Good Morning Britain kind of happy clappy presenters were saying, hypocrite. But on that point, Ollie, I just sent you the link, the last link in the group. Yeah. So yeah, this is what I saw the other day, which made me realize that what we're doing is really key work and important. Because this is called All In, All Together, and it's on societyofeditors.org.
Yes.
And it says UK government partners with newspaper industry on COVID-19 ad campaign. So rolling over the front page of the Evening Standard, Daily Fail, Daily Star, Guardian, Manchester Evening News,
Guardian as well.
I know it expands left and right, liberal and sort of authoritarian. It's a cross party, and I think one of the key notions here is that lack of opposition. I hate that term, Her Majesty's loyal opposition. I think it's really creepy. It's like we're inside the honeycomb. We're also supposed to be, the controlled opposition. But there's no loyal opposition to the people for the people of this country or of the world. There's no organ, there's no outlet that's widely available apart from YouTube and on some places online, which you now can get through your smart TV. But if you don't have a smart TV, then the TV as a medium is BBC,
Yeah.
unless you can get RT, which I think is on Freeview. But you know, the BBC's pumping it out on the video front, and then in the papers you've got here. Some of the language was really dark. The government and newspaper industry have formed a 3-month advertising partnership, so it's paid.
Right.
It's paid ads. So it's like there's money to help keep the public safe and the nation united. So dig for England, all this fake blitz spirit stuff, and the war language, the war vocabulary. The all-in, all-together campaign idea was developed by the newspaper industry. So it was not suggested by the government. They said, please, let us into the establishment. You know, it developed by
come on, guys, if you pay us enough, come on, tell you what, guys, you know what we're like. You just pay us enough, right? And we'll get the whole lot. We'll get the whole news, all across.
Wrap ourselves in your colours.
Just give us a bit of money.
Yes.
It's difficult now. You know, the Guardian, they're not making any money.
The culture secretary I saw a couple of months ago. There was a story said that British newspapers the advertisers that normally appear in British newspapers were refusing to put their ads alongside plague stories, right? So the advertisers, it was an appeal by the government to advertising corporations like Nestle and shit, that please put your ads next to the rank, like stomach turning stories about people dying in hospitals of their lungs collapsing, because you as British corporations should want to support our national newspaper industry by putting ads where you commercially don't see them as viable, because their papers are losing money. So this is you're right. This is the solution to that. And they were it was an appeal to the conscience of corporations that their ads would go alongside the stories that they would think that people would be turned off by, and then see the ad and think, oh god, no Kit Kat, you know, no Ford, I don't want to buy. And so that was the start for me of this kind of fake blitz spirit idea, this all in all together notion, which now the newspapers, you're right, they've come back around and said, okay, the advertisers have fled. Your appeal to their better nature, fancy that, didn't work. So now we're going to we've come to you. You're right. Yeah. So the newspapers come to the government with their campaign, supported by the Society of Editors, this website, as a way of delivering government communications in an intimate, human, and compassionate tone that readers can relate to. Like, that is, you know, how Orwellian. Can we just set up the Ministry of Truth now, please? You know, what is that? And that's in a website. The strapline of Society of Editors.org.
Wow.
Is fighting for media freedom. And they're the support. This is their press release of what this is. Today, for immediate release, today, Friday, 17th of April, all regional and national daily news brands will run the copy. Stay at home for the NHS, your family, your neighbours, your nation, the world, and life itself. Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein COVID. You know, it's what is that? So you, Danny Shine, staying in your house saves your nation, the world, and the life itself. Do you feel like a hero?
I do. I really
do. You, sir? Do you feel like a hero?
I really do. And you know, it was tough at times, but I feel that I've saved the whole world.
How many lives do you think you've saved?
I mean, I could have saved. In theory, I could have saved hundreds of thousands. If you think about it.
I know the tree.
What I mean?
Yes, the tree of infection.
It just goes. Yes, could be.
You've exponentially saved the planet.
Potentially.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. I mean, okay, so we arrived. Like we as a cover.
It was worth it. You know what I mean? It was worth it.
And online homepage takeover. takeover.
What's that?
So, so the slogan: all national daily news brands will run this slogan of like superheroes as a cover wrap and online homepage takeover. Takeover. That's what they're calling it. It's like, why is this language now in public? Okay, then maybe this is the boardroom. Maybe this is what they say, around the table. But this is now in the public eye, and you're right. It is our problem because we did a live stream just as the lockdown was starting, and I walked here because I coming from St Albans in Hertfordshire, and I came to St Pancras, and I switched over to the Circle line. And then there was this 1984 broadcast: you should not be traveling if you are a key. This is no longer the public transport. This is own transport only for key workers. Over the tannoy in the station. So they had closed Great Portland Street station down the street. And so I got off at Euston Square, and I walked from Euston Square through that little business site round up to Albany Street, and it was like 8 p.m. It was like just night was falling, and I was so shocked, and I was almost in tears because the only people I saw were some tramps and a couple of corner boys slinging drugs, and like that was it. All the citizens, all the yeomen, all the public they'd retreated back into their homes on day zero of the lockdown. There's no like, oh well, what do I think about this? What's my assessment? It was people weren't even sticking their nose out of their front door. The doors were closed. And nobody was even sniffing the air that night. And Oliver was here, and I came, and I was like almost in tears because I thought, this is like the end of public life. This is like the end of the public square, the end of public space. Because if the public aren't in the public spaces, somebody else will fill that vacuum, that power vacuum. It's back to the selfish gene. And I was just totally blindsided by it. I found the broadcast quite difficult because it really arrested me, like how easy it was. I mean, all these entities, states, governments, corporations, banks and so on, religious organizations, every big entity in the world, they've got like a filing cabinet in some dusty storeroom somewhere, maybe with a little policy wonk, typing. It's called like contingency plan. And in one of the drawers is like, what would happen? What could we do if nobody was watching for like 6 months, 3 months, 2 months? Normally you need consent. Everything's done in public. There's scrutiny. The journalists around. Even like, what's going on in this warehouse? What's going on in this building? Like, there's people walking by. They're looking in the window. There's like people walking around the world, and there's a kind of decentralized network of people, not surveillance of the state, but surveillance of the public on things that are happening in a city, around the place. And if you pull that back into the home, and who's in the streets, somebody's going to go there. And all these organizations, they're going to open up this drawer of like Glee and take out this file, like, oh, this would take 10 years and probably wouldn't work. And we did all this consent from all these different bodies and entities in the public, and we just tell everyone what's going on. We can just do this now, and nobody's going to notice, And when I was here that night,
I mean, the thing is, I'm just going to break in there because, see, to me, all of this is just. I have to bring this back to the most important part of our conversation. For me, the most important part of the conversation, and then maybe we can go on to Veggie Coin. But
yes,
because for me, the important part of the conversation is whether you're right or not, whether there's something fishy going on, or whether there is a lot of things fishy going on or not.
In different valencies and with different crowds.
All sorts of things, right? Whatever it is that's going on, the most important thing for me is to just keep on getting people to really question whether reproduction, is the right thing to do, or whether, because I'd like there to be I'd like people to do I've not found them. Put it this way, I've not found anybody who can give me a good reason why they should reproduce. And in this time, that's the most important thing for us to learn and to share. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter about whether this and that, and they're telling you the truth, and it's a conspiracy. What matters is to keep on with all your friends and family, to just bring that conversation up in the funniest way as you can, because it's a great conversation. It can be started off by, taking some condoms around to someone who you think should definitely not be reproducing. Start the conversation off like that. Everybody knows people who shouldn't be reproducing. Some people might give it to their own father, really.
Well, yeah, I was gonna. We come on to the medical stuff because you mentioned that very briefly, and I said, "Do you have any children?" You said, "I have 3 children."
Yes.
And that was where that was the point where I just brought it onto the organ donors. Like, if you're not willing to be an organ donor, should you accept organs from the queue? And so you have children, but you're an antinatalist.
Yes, that's right.
Do you think that people should have a few children and then stop, like you, or do you think that would you make an exception of yourself in that way, in the same way as the organ donorship, whether you do it yourself or whether you give and take, or just give or take?
Right. No, I'm saying that I didn't come across. I didn't know there was such a thing as natalism.
Well, the Catholic Church is natalist.
Yes,
like no contraception.
And so is the Jewish faith.
Yes.
Very much.
Yes.
Yes. And then so is society, very much.
Well, if you look at birth certificates and the kind of way that assets work in terms of population and demographics over time, governments want young populations. Governments want more workers than retirees. And if they're extending life expectancy, they want to have baby booms so that they can have enough workers to pay the taxes, to do the social security for the pensions. And so you're right, there's an inherent natalism in lots of organizations.
And there's an inherent natalism in our...
And the selfish gene.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
whether you go with that or whether you rebel against that.
Yeah, I'd never come across these arguments. I didn't even know there was such a thing until very recently. Okay. So it was long after.
Well, if you had kids yourself.
Yeah.
Would you make that decision differently? Had you known about that before?
Yes, but I would have made... all the important decisions I would have made differently had I have known what I know now.
Okay.
So I wouldn't. I went to university. I had a job. I did this. I got married. All those things might have been very different had I known what I know now.
And then reverse engineered your life based on the best practice.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Learning by other people's mistakes or learning by your own. But okay, so antinatalism. Selfish gene, putting the instincts and stuff aside, we've got the social and civilizational aspects of it. Do you apply that to humans, all life, including praying mantises and locusts and plants? What's in the natalist bracket for you? Is it humans, or is it life itself that should be antinatalist? Because I assume what your position is hortative. It's you're saying that other people should join your view at some. You're by proselytizing. You're advocating other people to do it too, or even more than you, by not having children in the first place.
Yes.
And so first question: where is the boundary line of antinatalism? Is it no more humans, or is it a few lower human population and less impact on the environment, or is it environmental argument, or is it more existential about the world should just be an unconscious ball just floating through space and nobody there to look at it, the tree falling in the forest?
Okay, where are we going? Okay, so you've asked quite a long question.
We can break it down into little chunks.
Okay, so let's break it down into smaller chunks, and then what we'll all do is meditate on that.
Great.
Yeah. So we'll just break it down.
So firstly, In your antinatalism, who or what things that are alive should not reproduce?
Right. So I invite everybody to think about that, or to count to 30 before they, and sort of meditate on that question.
Okay. I just saw Mark Zuckerberg's face, but go on.
I think I don't know. I mean, the first question that comes up for me is, how many do you think should reproduce? Can you name a species that should be reproducing?
Well, I'm a humanist in the sense that I think that consciousness is a very special thing in the universe, as far as we've seen. I don't like the sun isn't conscious in a way that we have worked out yet. Like, although you have Gaia theory and sort of James Lovelock and that kind of thing about the world being an organism, it doesn't necessarily seem that it has a verbal consciousness in the way that we have. And although dolphins have very complex communication systems and chimpanzees make tools, I don't think in that Dawkins sense about the self-analysis, self-awareness. I think self-awareness is a very special thing that humans have, and maybe soon some computers might have. And I think that quality is something that is of credit to the universe. Like, if the tree falls in the forest, if there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, if there's no one who has the possibility of hearing it, if there's not anybody who can even understand it, because it's just a tree and the only thing that's around are like fungus, then I think that's a worse universe than one where there is somebody who can then Wordsworth write the poem about the tree, let nature be your teacher. I think that creating art and thought and discourse and those things are special and a credit to the universe in some way. And so if there's nobody to do it, unless the computers are just doing it and we become part of the computer, become kind of melded in some way, or vestigial, that the computer eats us and goes on doing its own thing. We both studied biology in that sense and looked at whether it's life on Earth or Dawkins or whatever. Something will reproduce, whether it's bacteria, whether it's rats, whether it's cockroaches, whether it's files.
Right.
So if humans aren't doing it, then who's going to be doing it?
Yeah. I invite you to think about who should reproduce, because I did ask you that.
Yeah.
Who you
not
think,
Mark Zuckerberg.
What you think? Not Mark Zuckerberg.
When I was human. I mean, I am human. I mean, can he lick his eye? I don't know if he can blink. Maybe he has to lick his eye. I mean, you don't see it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that.
No, let me have a think about that, and invite you also to think about it as well. Just count to 30.
I mean, is just interested in the weddings thing as well.
One second, I'll come back to that. I mean, I think that these sort of questions take us away from the main point of it, which is, but I would answer the question as saying that, as far, I haven't thought things through at all. Right?
Antinatalism wasn't one of your expert areas. Disruption and weddings were,
yes,
but not the topics of antinatalism.
No, absolutely not.
Although
my current
interest,
I do have a current interest and position
Yeah.
Which
So what is the position?
The position is that it's not a good idea to reproduce, because it's just not, on so many levels, on an ethical and logical level, it just makes no sense at all. And it's for humans, and I mean, it makes no sense for all of life to reproduce, in my opinion, because there's so much suffering out in the world.
Yeah, and I'm with you.
And it's just, it's just imposing
I'm with
suffering and pleasure on beings who didn't need either of them to start with.
Yes, I get you. It's kind of existential, and I drew a graph, and I'll just draw it for you here. Actually, I fucked it up. It's like this. So let's say 0, there's -1, and there's +1, right? And here's time t. So here's a life. This is like pleasure. This is p.
Yeah.
So 0 is like neutral pleasure, pain. 1 is like great, lovely time. -1 is pain, suffering, not a nice time.
Yeah.
Time goes on.
Yeah.
So you come into the world, let's say it's at 0.
Yeah.
Then let's say you have a nice childhood.
You're right.
And you go up and you have like a nice education, and you have a career that you like, and things are going really well. Maybe there's like some stuff here when you're a teenager.
Right.
Like there's some turmoil. But let's say you have some achievements in life, and then you get ill when you're old in your 70s, and then you suffer. Right. Yeah. And so here's like maybe 30 to 40 years.
Yeah.
So it's a really bad graph. So I don't know if you can see that. So this graph represents, on the x-axis is time, and on the y-axis is pleasure and pain. So 0 is no pleasure, no pain. 1 is pleasure, and -1 here is pain. And then this is kind of the shape of a life that goes along here. So let's say you start at 0 when you're born, and then you have a nice childhood, you start gaining pleasure, you have education, a career that you like, you have some achievements, and then at some point you get ill and you die. And so from your pleasure, maybe there's some turmoil in your teenage years, we might illustrate it here. But then at a certain point, you're going to go down because you're going to die. And you're probably going to get ill shortly before that or sometime before that. And that intermediate span is like maybe 30 to 40 years of adult life that you could have a nice time in. And so this is what I wanted to ask you. So let's say you die here at like 70 years old.
Yeah.
Like my friend's father that died at 71 the other week.
Yeah.
And so at this point, you go possibly like quite far down in the pain. And so maybe you go down. Yeah. So so the X is actually going to be there. And then, so you've got into real pain. This is your illness.
Yeah.
Illness when you're dying. Let's say that's 1 year.
Yeah.
And so then, where you've died, right? The cutoff line of the end of your life is here. Where do you go from there? And this is how I made what I think is a point that we all would be interested in. I'd like to hear your opinion on. So people say, okay, let's take the religious out, that you think you have an afterlife, you're going to burn, or you're going to have a banquet in heaven. Let's say that you're an atheist, you don't have any view of the afterlife. I don't either. And so all of the days when you are not alive in the future, after your death, when you could be alive, there could be a universe where the day you die, you actually survived and you lasted 1 day more. And that day, you 1 day more. It's not a necessary condition for the universe gravity working that you're dead on that day. You could imagine a universe very easily where you're still alive and you could still have pleasure and enjoy yourself. You weren't ill, whatever. So for every one of those days that you're dead into the indefinite future, what is your interest level? Now, a lot of people say 0. Like every day you're dead, you register as 0 on the pleasure pain axis because you're not there to experience it. However, you could also say from the perspective of you being alive, you could be alive, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be alive on that day. You can put yourself at a -1 forever. Like, so every day that you're not alive, you could be alive, and so you're suffering because there's no reason why you shouldn't be experiencing nice things and having a lovely life. And so if you go along at 0 forever, then the graph kind of evens out. Okay, I take a step back. The area positive area under the graph is the pleasure in your life, and the negative area under the graph is the pain in your life. And so perhaps you could say that a parent bringing a child into the world has the optimistic view that in some way the pleasure or benefit of their life is going to equal or either equal or be more than the pain and suffering. And so you bring someone into the world with the idea that I'm going to give you this gift of life, and I hope at least it's going to be a pretty good experience, and that's going to filter out into the way you drop your laser. The filter out into the way you exist in reality, and give to the world and receive from the world in a beneficial way, perhaps for those 30 to 40 years when you're an adult, that you have your life, a functional life. So if you zero out, then the graph kind of stops here, because you've got the shape of your life, and then you've got the pleasure and pain axes, and you can tot up the positive value under the curve and the negative value above the curve, and you can come to like equals, 20 pleasure points, 10 pleasure points, -5 pleasure points in life, and then that's the shape of your life. However, if like an existentialist, like sort of Camus, kind of myth of Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, if you say that you have a negative interest in being dead, that you're suffering for being dead, that you could be alive, and so it's not in your interest to be dead on that day, so you just register a -1, then you quickly, you all the profit you've made in your pleasure, the longer you don't exist, you're eating into the pleasure that you had in your life, because you're no longer there to exist in. So I wanted to turn this into a graph, because I thought that the way you deal with these things is through numbers, and you look at numbers to understand sentences, and you can start looking at data. And this isn't data, this is kind of just a theoretical model, but it's perhaps the idea of being a parent, bringing somebody into the world, could be that you're optimistic that the pleasure curve is going to be bigger than the pain curve. And on the -1 model, that's never true,
right?
Because because giving the gift of life and then having nature take it away again when you die, it's like the bittersweetness of the manifold sensation of life. You get it for a while, and then you get too decrepit to enjoy it anymore, and then you don't have it any longer, and that bittersweetness might be so ugly that it wasn't worth doing in the first place.
Exactly.
And that could be an argument.
That's the risk that every parent takes. And it's a risk that they take, which they actually, many of them wouldn't actually take themselves, because there's a question that I ask people sometimes, which is, if before you were imagine if before you were conceived, and there's a soul, there's some soul waiting to be incarnated into your parent's child, right? And God comes up to you and says, okay, son, to let you know that your parents are feeling a little bit, tonight, a little bit horny tonight, and you know what they're like, and they're going to produce you, and
are you up for it?
And you
installment, you're in the queue.
Imagine,
take your ticket.
Okay, imagine, are you up for it? What would you say? If you were wise, what would you say? You're this, you don't know what.
I mean, in my current life, I'd say
No, but you see, we're not talking about you in your current life. We're talking about you
in principle.
You in principle. Do you want to live life or not? And what you would need to do is to ask what does it entail living life? And if you were then told, well, you could be a paraplegic,
bacterium,
or a woman, a woman, you could be a woman, you could be a slave,
you could be born into a war zone,
you could be would you you could
have
you could
cancer
die
at
of
age
cancer?
5.
Yeah. That could happen, or you could be very happy and be nice,
a composer, and they have beautiful music around you for your whole life.
Yeah, everything will go hunky dory.
You'd be like die when you're 95.
Really well.
Yes. While conducting your own requiem. Yeah. And there's a summation point. And then you cop it. I get what you're saying. But it's kind of, my answer would be, I'd prefer to roll the dice. It's like Rawls talked about this.
Well, the thing is that's fair enough. Yeah.
But designing that for someone else, you're right. It's the responsibility, and that is a responsibility of making that decision non-consensually for another being.
Yeah.
Who then is thrust into the world. We all can. Camus was interested in suicide, in this idea of, does the philosopher have to commit suicide because they haven't decided to be in the world, and the pain is blah blah blah, and so the only rebellion, like Dawkins' rebellion of not having children, the philosopher's rebellion for Camus, that's what the myth of Sisyphus is really about. Is it you've got to laugh at the god by committing suicide? And he says no. There's the Joker. You're the Joker. You're the ludic figure. He says the Joker is such that although he goes and he has to push the rock up the hill, and then it just rolls back past him before he gets to the top, and he's got to go back down forever and push it up again. And that could be life. It could be the l'enfer c'est l'autre, is hell is other people, said Sartre. This existentialist mid 20th century sort of post Second World War idea that of France in the 50s, like is life not worth living after the World War II? For the philosopher, for the intellectual. And Camus' answer, he died in a one-car crash. He flew off the road because he was a speed demon. Actually, he didn't make that choice. But his notion with the myth of Sisyphus is, and it is you, because he says, okay, you've got this task, you're Sisyphus, you've got to push this rock up the hill, and you've done it 1,000,000 fucking times by now, and you're just going to do it another 1,000,000 times forever. And he says, would you not want to commit suicide in the afterlife as Sisyphus, let the rock roll over you, or somehow jump off the cliff, somehow try and break the game and break this cycle of dolor and torment? And he says no. He says the key to life is the key to really saying fuck you to the demon that creates the universe and puts you in this position of not having the choice, not having given consent, is to laugh while you're strolling down the hill to pick the rock up again, to do it again. Your freedom, that little moment of freedom when the rock rolls past you, and then you will start walking back down the hill. You can whistle a merry tune. And that's what fucks off the demon, because he's not got your consent. He's not got your consciousness. You can rebel in mind, even when they bind your hands and make you do anything. And this is what you do. This is what you do in your work, in your YouTube work, is you can see the funny side of what could be police state, dark 1984 stuff. And you have the whistling. You are the Sisyphus whistling down the hill. That's how I see you. In terms of what you've put out there in the world.
And I just want to let you know that if my wife ever watches this, which is extremely unlikely, she doesn't really watch my films or films that have anything but me in them. If she does, I just wanted to, listen to what this man has just described me, because she just thinks, it's not serious. No, it's a very serious thing. You do a very serious thing. Is it in a funny way? But the only way you can do some serious things is through humor. But that would be I've thought about this in detail, because when I was a kid, I sort of had this antinatalist idea because of looking at biology and that chapter in Dawkins. And so that was 8, and I then went to sort of 14 and so on, and read all this existentialism and thought, And then I read Myth of Sisyphus when I was 18, and that was a sunny revelation that you can go through the existentialist trauma. You can go through I didn't give permission for this. I need to register my protest. But the registering of the protest can be fun. Yeah, as you know, it's like, right. No, you can't have my mind. I can always think something, and you can't get me. That's what you do. And so, when you started talking about antinatalism, I wanted to have this discussion in detail, because it's something that I'm interested in.
And I do accept that the parenthood notion is a fraught notion of this graph of like pleasure pain principle of denying somebody the fruits that they've just been given this sweet taste of, and then life takes it away, or the universe takes it away from them again. It is a tragedy, and life has a tragic coloring to it. My father died of lung cancer a couple of years ago, 65. He had a year. He was diagnosed at stage 4, and he and I went through these sort of discussions in his long life. He had books of famous last words. Those curtains go where I do. I'm feeling a little better today. He had gallows humor in his life. He was an atheist, but in his last year, he was diagnosed small cell lung cancer stage 4. So he'd been carrying the tumor for some time, and he and I had this astonishing intellectual relationship where we discussed everything with humor, like you do, and he went into himself in that period. He survived just over a year. With that diagnosis, you generally last 90 days, but he pushed it, and he took chemo, he took radio. He wanted to survive, even though he kind of knew it was a death sentence. But he retreated into himself, and he meditated on what he was going to go through. And our conversations about that fun, like intellectualized notion of reality stopped. And I didn't want to interrupt him in his meditative state. And he had issues with his with the cancer spreading to various parts of his body, and that was very sad to watch, and it was very sad to be. Not that I am him, but I saw him and I love him. And so he didn't want children until he was in his mid-30s, and then he had me when he was age 36, and I'm an only child. My mother wanted children in an abstract way. They were together since their age 20.
Did she persuade him then?
She didn't persuade him per se. She just kind of said, look, am I going to be a person who never has children? Because my mother was 37, well, sort of 35. This is 1984, funny enough. They've been together about 15 years. And then my mother said to my father, am I going to be a person who never has children? Because you have this idea you don't want. My father's an old socialist. You don't want to like participate in the establishment. You don't want to be part of the system. You want to be like a rebel. That's fine. And you don't like the idea of reproduction and being a patriarch and so on. But does that have to be my choice too? My father said no. And they got married because they were never married. They got married in 1985, and then I was born in 1987. And so my father sort of relented on his idea. He had a principle about that when he was a young man. Like, I don't want to be like a patriarch. I don't want to replicate that reality in my life. And then I think he loved me and I loved him. And I think he got into it. He even wanted some more kids, but my mother didn't want anymore. One was enough for her. So he got into the idea of being married. He got into the idea of having a child,
right? And
educating me, teaching me everything he knew, and really going into detail as we were discussing before. And he wanted to. He was a management consultant in computing, and so he taught he every task in life, including his last illness and death, he treated as a management project with a very methodical. With a very methodical outlook and planned. And so he planned me and planned my education, and he taught me maths. And so I've got a sort of a creative brain, but he made me activate both of the sides of my brain and taught me maths, and gave me the analytical heft of like not just being an arts person. And that was a very beautiful thing. And I think he went through that of being interested in firstly politics, left-wing politics not being part of the system, and then into biology and Darwinism and so on. And so yeah, I've lived through that, some of those, and learned from some of those discussions and some of those ideas. And so I was very interested to have this discussion with you, because as a father, what's your experience like of being a father to bring you to the antinatalist position? I don't have any kids. I've not got skin in the game.
There are, firstly, that there are a lot of amazing things about being a father, and a lot of amazing times that I've had and still have. So So I don't want to suggest that there aren't and there are lots of things that I've learned, and I'm sure lots of things I'll still learn, and it's pushed me beyond my comfort zone many times. But I guess I kind of never questioned what I did from the point of view. I never really thought about having children from the point of view of what it would be like to be a child or a human being in this world. I never thought of that. I never thought
you were a child.
What I know I was, but I'm saying, but I never thought about, well, okay, so if I have children, then I wonder what would it be like for them? Would they want to come into this world? Or what would it be like for them? Yeah, I didn't ever think about that because of my upbringing. It was just did it without thinking about it at all.
Okay.
And I think it's hard. I think life is just, it's almost an impossible feat to get it right.
Yeah.
There's so many different areas that you're challenged by. And it's so difficult. I find it so difficult to try and encourage all my children or to live wholesome, healthy lives, and all the ego and the clashing and the madness. And it's all like, without thinking about the effect it has on other people, the effect it has on the environment.
That's interesting.
It's one of the interesting things about this COVID thing is that, one of the positive things behind it is that people are learning that actually their actions affect other people as well, right? I mean,
are you an antinatalist for viruses?
For
viruses.
What do you mean an antinatalist?
Should viruses not reproduce?
Yes, they should not reproduce.
They should choose to self.
If there are any viruses listening at the moment, stop reproducing. Find another way.
Write a symphony and conduct it, and then
exactly
swallow yourselves into oblivion. Environment. There is a lot of antinatalism in the environmental movement.
Well, you can't. How can you possibly be an environmentalist and not be an antinatalist? I mean, the worst thing you can do for the environment, by far, and certainly in the West, is to reproduce.
But I'm really on a nature red and tooth and claw vibe. So I'm not.
No, I agree with you about that.
Like, if you don't reproduce, there's more wilderness. The more wilderness is like, there's a deer, it's been half eaten by a fox, and it's got one leg hanging off, and the gangrene gets in, and it dies on the ground.
But I agree, but
there's more space for that.
Okay, so don't call it the environment. But I mean, basically, you're bringing more people. Every more person you bring in is all part of a horrible, obnoxious, extremely violent, extremely unfair system. And you're bringing more people in that are going to buy more things in Primark, that are going to be made by more people in Bangladesh, right? Who are going to be in circumstances that you wouldn't want your children to be in, and on and on and on it all goes.
So is antinatalism then throwing up your hands and saying, I don't know how to fix society, so I think we should probably just stop making more people? Yeah, what you were saying there was almost like there are problems in society. The replication of those problems is an issue for you. You haven't really, not in any sense of that it's bad, but you haven't got home-baked solutions ready and steaming fresh from the oven to say this is the society we should be making and the way we should be replicating. So your notion is, well, withdrawal is probably a good idea, like withdraw from that game, and if we don't have the solution to consumers, like reforming a consumer society and making it something that's more sustainable or beneficial, then we shouldn't have kids.
So I'll share with you an idea that I've been playing with a little bit, and maybe you can play with. Okay, so I was brought up in an Orthodox Jewish environment, and there was a heavy emphasis on the Jewish studies part. So I've read through the Bible many times, and I parted way with it many years ago. In terms of, I think that there are parts of it that are that I find really problematic.
Are you an agnostic, an atheist, Jewish? What's your what do you come from that?
Okay, I'm not going to go down that road because
cool.
I was just going to take me off another path.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that
there was a journey.
The Bible is not something that I quote for, not because I believe that it's the word of some deity. I wouldn't quote the Bible for that because I don't think it is, but many people do. So I thought but I think that in many holy books, so-called holy books, I don't think they're holy, right? But in many books that are supposedly holy, obviously contain some really good ideas. Yeah. And I think there is a biblical idea that we could implement or to play with the idea of implementing immediately, which is the idea of Shemitah, right? Which other people have spoken about in the past. Shmittah, right? Which is the 7th year sabbatical, right? Right. So in the biblical law, every 7 years you had to leave the land fallow.
Yes.
Right.
Crop rotation.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, like Saxons.
But it can be used as a metaphor
for the shape of your
right. And it has been used, and our own governments pay people to have sabbaticals. Did you know that?
Oh,
your tax money goes to pay people to have sabbaticals.
I know,
not one sabbatical.
Teaching. I know
every 7 years.
Is this
every 7 years?
I know
academics get a year sabbatical, right?
In universities,
and you and me pay for that as taxpayers. Yeah, for them to have a sabbatical. So what I think would be a good solution is.
So it's the Sabbath, it's the week, but
correct,
in a year basis.
In a year basis, right?
Okay.
So I say first you get the Shemitah, and then you call a day for the Jubilee, which is another very, very good idea from the Bible, right? Because in the Jubilee, which was the 7th of the 7 years, and I don't believe in any of these numbers.
It's not numerology like
no. I'm saying yes. I'm sure they've got
49 years,
right? Yeah. They had some rule that it was 49 years, right?
There's a Kabbalistic kind of thing, but okay. But
all debts were wiped.
Okay.
Right, all debt wiped. At 49 years. Now, so I'm saying
this is cool.
Let's really get an idea from the Bible. You get all the religious people on board. That everybody should take a year a sabbatical. During that sabbatical, they will have time to reflect on their lives. They will have time to they'll have time to cook for themselves and learn how to take care of themselves properly. They'll have time to think about what they're doing, and I'll tell you about that in a second, right? And think about their lives and what direction their lives are taking it, right?
Taking stock. This sabbatical last 1 year,
and it's a period of recovery. Recovery from sickness.
Is that 6 and 1 or 7 and?
It's 6 and then 1. Right?
6 and 1, so it's 6 years on, 1 year.
It's irrelevant. The numbers,
Okay, it's
the concept of taking a sabbatical, which we already have in our society.
Yes.
Yes.
For certain academics.
And why on earth should an academic go on a sabbatical? Why? Why?
To do research, to get out into the world and do some.
Why shouldn't everyone do that?
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree absolutely.
So I'm saying
medics also do it.
So I'm saying.
Medics also do it in their training.
You start with all the people who are non-essential. All the non-essential workers.
So all of the office workers that we were talking about before.
All the non-essential workers. Wait, it's even more than we've got now, right? All the non-essential workers, get a year in which they are guaranteed, and they might be of different, wealth, and they might have to apply, right? Because if they've got decent wealth and they can manage for a year and they don't need a subsidy, then they won't necessarily get it, right? But everybody else, right, other than the top, like real heavy, right? Everybody else, will be guaranteed enough
universal basic income for a year.
Something like that for just a year. Their sabbatical, right? and that UBI will be enough to get them by, and it's just for a year while they have a sabbatical, and everybody
rotates.
Right, gets the UBI. Everyone gets the UBI, including the people that are working.
Yeah.
Right, but you then allow the people decide through voting on blockchain, maybe, right? They decide which careers are essential. Yeah. So that would mean basically that if you voted that KFC is essential, you would be part of basically forcing KFC staff to work, and you would be depriving them of their sabbatical. Yeah. So I would think that if you did that, you'd get the overwhelming majority of people wouldn't be able to do that to the people, because they would realize that someone who works in fucking KFC, right, needs to like get out and chill and like look for something decent.
When you say
hold on. So all restaurants, right,
as now,
all restaurants will be finished
as now.
And they'll all be able to take sabbaticals, which is wonderful, because working in a flipping restaurant is not essential, because people, if they're on sabbatical, they can do it themselves.
Yes.
Why should somebody have to spend? Why
their
should
hours.
their 40
days.
hours of their days cooking for me?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Right. And so I'm saying, look, everyone gets a sabbatical who's non-essential, right?
Yeah.
And you can get rid of all the stuff that's closed today, right? The nails and the hair. Yeah. My child does my hair now. I'm an idiot going to some guy every time, right?
Yes.
The nails and the hair and the betting shops and the accountants that work for the people and the lawyers that work for those people. Yes. You know, and I think it needs to go even further than that. I think it needs to go to the factories that make the shit food.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Like the workers who work in the factories that make shit food, they should be having a sabbatical.
Yes.
Because we don't need that shit food. If you want to make shit food, you can buy some sugar and put it in some flour and make it yourself.
Is the sabbatical rolling for different people in different years, or is it 1 year for everyone in the society? Is it a collective thing, or is it like these people are on sabbatical this year and then we roll it to next year?
I don't know the details. I don't know the details.
Your idea was almost like now lockdown consciousness of like all of the consumer society is scraped off for a while for everyone. Now that would be high. That would be high impact on society. If you did it in a rolling way, where it's like 1/7 every year for the 7 years, and then you have a rolling system, it would be like less impact. It depends whether you want the high impact on society to really get in people's heads, like now, or whether you want it to be like a more sustainable system of some people get some time off. If the Jubilee concept sounds like it's a collective, it's like for the nation, for the civilization.
Okay, so the sabbatical is just an idea, right? To change it into something that is like, instead of a lockdown, right? That it's actually a
flowering.
It's a recovery. It's a recovery period. Yes. Yeah, because one of the things that has come out from this is that the focus the whole time is on the bug out there. Right? When actually we don't like to think about this, and I certainly don't. But actually, the focus is not the bug out there. The focus is what's the terrain like. Yes. What's the terrain of my body like? What's my eating like? What's my,
the immune system? Do you get vitamin D? Do you get vitamin C? Do you get vitamin B?
Exactly.
Do you, have you got your zinc?
Yeah.
Even if you're not taking hydroxychloroquine, as a prophylactic, your zinc is
Hold on. Don't prop that one in. I don't know enough about
I've given
things.
2 weeks ago, I gave the dosages that the doctor gave me on air. I haven't got contacted yet. So I have a doctor who was writing to me, who was saying, look, you can also look it up. The way to look at it is in the trials.
Yeah.
So if you look at the NHS and other research institutes have trials, and in the trial advert for volunteers or people who are ill who want to go into the voluntary program, they have to give the dose that they say placebo or this dosage of this medicine.
Right.
So you can see in the adverts of the trials what dose, if you can get hold of the medicines yourself, you can medicate to the same as the trial, like this number of milligrams, this number of days, and this combination with other things. So this is a way of doing medicine for yourself, as you say, taking a measure of yourself and working out what you need. And see, I put it out the other day online. I haven't had like the GMC or anybody knocking on the door yet. We hope they do, by the way, because this stuff should be more publicly available, and people should be able to medicate themselves based on an adult notion of their own biome, their own immune system, their own body, what they need, which we've been discussing on the show quite a bit. But I noticed that nobody's yet. Maybe we haven't got big enough on YouTube yet. But, we're getting improving every time. But I was interested that might be an odd thing, like a thing that might be prohibited, is saying 200 milligrams for 5 days.
Right.
Not saying hydroxychloroquine, but saying, this dose, am I giving you a prescription? Like, am I doing medical advice in some way? No, I'm not giving medical advice.
Right.
I'm just telling you how to be healthy. And that's different. But professionalism, one thing we mentioned earlier about the organ donation.
Yeah.
I don't trust professionalism. Right. Patient advocacy is very important. If your family member is in the hospital, you've got to be there 24/7 at their side. They're out of it. And they're not compos mentis. They can't make decisions for themselves. They can't press for their own care. They can't make sure they're getting the best care. They'll get a good standard of care, but it's a standard of care based on a protocol. It's the patient advocate, it's the family member that's got to really push for that individual to get the best care that they're going to get. And with people locked out of hospitals at the moment, you see that people aren't getting access to their family member to do that patient advocacy. And so they're getting whatever is inside, and that may be a very high level of care, but it's not individuated in that way. What's the nutrients that you need? What do you need? What do you need individually to suit your body and the way it works? So we've been looking a bit at professionalism and this notion of trusting. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Trust me, I'm a BBC journalist. Trust me, I'm a government spokesperson, and interrogating that a bit, because I think that as you've seen, a lot of what's being pumped out at the moment is very much lacking in that sense of questioning and like trying to work out what's really going on for me. What do I want? What's my reaction? That's not a space. I like your silences. It's not a space that's really being given a great deal. Like, what do I make of this? What's my take on it? It's like it's these download. It's an information download, one to many through the BBC like portal. That's the reassertion of this top down society of like people being told, instructed what to do. What you do, you're out in public minding your own business and having your fun, and people can play the game or they can get offended by the game, and that's not against the law, as you've made quite clear to all of your challenges. But yeah, there's not really that space for questioning and debating outside of internet forums and so on, which is great. I mean, we have that. At least we've got that. The Chinese don't have that. It's unmonitored, and that's what they want. That's what they want to bring over. And you're seeing it with people being censored off YouTube. You're seeing it with people being censored off Twitter and various social media platforms.
Can we get back to, again,
yeah,
because I think that the most important thing is, like, look, we can chat about it all, just like millions of people are now around the world talking about it all.
Yes.
Yeah. And some of them know a lot more than me, and some of them even know a lot more than you.
Absolutely.
Right? About lots of different things.
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing we know is that we know nothing.
Exactly.
I'm with Socrates. Go Socrates.
You think you know nothing? I'll tell you so. When it comes to knowing nothing.
Should we put it down?
You don't even know anything about knowing nothing.
Should we put it down as another knowing nothing? Creating disruption in public spaces, wedding, singing, and knowing nothing. Okay.
That's right.
That's everyone can be an expert in that. Can they?
They can, I think, yes.
But some are more expert.
Sorry, what was I saying?
Everyone can talk about things that they think they may know about.
So I'm saying, we can talk about it, but I think it's I think for me it's about making fun of it, but it's also about like fantasizing different ways of and different.
I love the
playing
Jubilee
with
thing,
different ideas, right?
Yeah, I love the sabbatical.
The Jubilee. I mean, we didn't really speak much about the Jubilee, but the Jubilee, the idea of getting rid of the debts, it's not the 49 years that's important. It's that at the end of a fixed period of time, during a person's lifetime, all debts were
mortgage.
Yeah,
I mean that's the death bond.
Yes,
mortgage.
All of that stuff. I mean, you don't need to know about the words. You just need to look around you, right? And so, what would happen if they would say, "This is what lots of ideas that I have." But what about we get together and we say we are a growing network of people around the world that are calling for the removal for Jubilee by the year 2025, 2030, 20 whatever. Yeah, by some date, that is when this system is going to change.
Let's do it.
And right, and
shall we?
And yes,
shall
right,
we?
And then yes, why not?
Okay.
Right, and then
I'm down.
like during that time, during that period, however many years we give it, people will have an opportunity to put ideas forward about how to move on.
Yes.
But that's the date that's set when all the debts are gone.
Yes.
Right? And then we'll see what happens.
Alphas are omega. All odds are even. Yes.
Just gone.
Yes. Yeah. And people can breathe a fresh start. All of those obligations. Yes. Those credit default swaps and so on can be zeroed out. Back to our zeroed out graph of like no pleasure, no pain. Just like let's have a fresh start. But no, I really like that, and it speaks to a lot of the things that I've been looking at in terms of the blockchain and the way that fiat currency works.
Did I just?
What? You touched me? Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to wash my hands now.
Yes.
For at least 20 seconds.
Yes.
Do you have anything that I could?
Some coffee.
No. Oh my God.
You might need to cut the hand off. Actually, it may be time for amputation. Cut off the limb to save the body. Trust me, anyway. So maybe my hand will be better on your body. Maybe we should transplant my hand onto you.
No, but you haven't given permission, have you?
Yeah, I took myself off the register. I put the gold star on of like not participating in serfdom of body. I don't rent my body, and my body is my territory. I'm sovereign. I'm self-sovereign body. It's gonna be with me, and then I'm gonna trash it, like completely destroy it. Like you can't get hold of this. It's not for you. I'm going to use the hell out of it and then give it to you as a total wreck. Use that to power 10 other people. It says on the website you could power 10, like you could power the bodies of 10 other people. Not power. I mean,
whatever.
You could save 10 other people.
Yeah.
And that may be the utilitarian calculus of the bean counter in the administration saying, well, you can take 2 corneas to 2 people, 2 lungs to 2 other people, a heart to another, the kidneys. You can save 10 fucking people with this one guy. But of course, this is what John Stuart Mill was saying, that Jeremy Bentham's notion of the greatest good for the greatest number means that you can nominate me today to give the benefit to 10 other people, and that might work out in the equation correctly. So you then today put me in a bath of ice, open my body cavity up, and like take it all out. I'm healthy, but I'm better off, helping these 5 violinists and this accountant and these bankers over here, who are all dying and need these, and they're going to be more productive than me. So their lives are going to be better.
I mean, at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, you're probably unlikely to help more than one person, right? Because
they say 10. They say you.
No, but does that mean that they've got some method of storing your limbs for a long time? Because it's unlikely that someone's going to need
more organ match
all at the right time.
Well, no, there's a queue. There's a queue of kidney people. There's a queue of heart people. There's a queue of lung people. So you're just the first in the queue for all of this corneas. So when you go, suddenly it's open season, and like it's bids going in from all of the different specialisms for what is left in you that still works, the spare parts. Look, the logic that I have about this professionalism thing and trusting in the system is this: you're in a hospital, you're in a persistent vegetative state. The places in America where you've got Christians saying, no, my relative's going to wake up one day. And sometimes they do. Like this insurance company is going to keep paying for this bloody ICU until the Trump of the Judgment Day. And one day they're going to wake up, because even if Judgment Day comes, they're going to need their body to do the rapture. Nevertheless, they're very serious about this. Like, we have not paid to have our relative die in a utilitarian system, and they're very clear about this in places in America. Whereas here we have this, we've discussed it before on the show, which was a beautiful socialized system of medicine in the 1940s and 50s, which is now this kind of Sovietized system where Dan and Philip, our Russian friends, they go to Russia, to Ukraine to get medical treatment, because you can just queue and like pay $100 and get really top grade treatment in like a standard hospital anywhere in Moscow, Petersburg, Kiev, Odessa. And they go there on Wizz Air for £20 when they're from Luton, and you can get great treatment without all the sort of, you need to be triaged in a GP, and then you need to go to a specialist in 5 months' time, and like you can access portals and so on, and gatekeeping. Look, in the end, you're either a recipient of organs, or you're a potential human resource donor. And it's not, you're not going to have some, we may joke about, oh, maybe my hand is better because my hand can play the piano, and then you need to have a hand that plays the piano, so you can put it on, we can swap. And that utilitarian kind of crazy version. But more importantly, that's the kind of the taking it to the end of the game, when it's a reduction ad absurdum and so on, it could become silly, and that's nice. But in the end, we're not going to be swapping organs. I'm not going to if I'm in a hospital bed, they're not going to put some in me and take others out. So it's either all in or all out. So I'm either a recipient of care to the max, or I'm a potential, based on my donorship status, resource. Billions of dollars worth of organs have just been land grabbed by the British state. So 65 million people, assuming, let's say, there were no organ donors before and everyone is now an organ donor. So maybe 60 million people have had their organs as asset value land grabbed by the state. And that's how many billions of dollars? Because, like, organs on the black market are worth a fucking lot of money. So okay, you can see your organs as not as medical resources as the guy on Facebook does, or me, I see them as my property to dispose of as I wish with my bad lifestyle, or you can see them as credit default swap asset value. Yeah, what's the what's on the ledger? And so my ledger is heart of 33-year-old, this amount of exercise. And what's interesting is when you go onto this organ system, your estate isn't paid out Ollie got eminent domain, right? He got this on the basis of the government bought his land out from underneath him to do an infrastructure project. And so he had a compulsory purchase. And sometimes they give you very little because they undervalue your land, and sometimes you do very well out of it, but it's non-consensual either way. You have to move out. In certain states in America, you could hold out. They want to build a casino in Nevada, and you've got the little up house, so the little old man stays there, and they offer $1 million. All the other people are gone. They offer $10 million. He says no. They offer $100 million, and they start trying to get him out of the house, just by pushing him and beating him up and whatever. But so that's some we have freehold in this country, and the Crown owns all the land. Now the Crown owns all the bodies. We freehold. We're free to hold. The words are important: mortgage, death bond, freehold. You're free to hold it until you're not, until we need it back.
Right.
And so now we're free. We've gone from sovereign bodies to freehold bodies down to leasehold bodies. That's why this episode is called what it is: the great 2020 body snatch, because what you're doing on an empirical scale in the world is then filters into these other discussions, because it's a thin end of a wedge has happened in our society. And now we're seeing almost daily, as far as I mean, if you talk about the Society of Editors article we just looked at, if you look at at lockdown kind of laws, and Mary Dino, which we discussed briefly before, she was this woman who was caught loitering in a Tyneside train station, refused to speak to the transport police, was banged up in jail. The CPS prosecuted her under the COVID Act, and then a magistrate fined her £660 and convicted her. Then they were all reprimanded for not knowing what the law is, because they didn't have a reasonable suspicion that she was a carrier or spreader of the plague, and so they had the only powers they had to stop and demand your name and address, and so rather than just treating you as a member of the public, was that if they had a reasonable suspicion she was a carrier or spreader, she was just in a station, not willing to speak, not willing to treat, like just in that common law way, and they got to the point of convicting. Then it was all undone, but she'd already been harmed in terms of her life being forfeit in the system.
I know what that's like.
So she then did it again. She then went to Scotland a week later, and she was caught in Glasgow. Again, they tried to interrogate her. We'll find the links. We'll put them in the description below when we're done with the show, and for next time, and so on we'll discuss. But so she went to Scotland, into Glasgow, and she was arrested again in Glasgow a week later. And then she was banged up. She stripped naked she refused to speak. She was stripped naked in the cell as a protest. Again, the Procurator Fiscal, the CPS in Scotland, and the magistrates there tried to convict her of the same thing. And they had to undo it again. And again, she walked free. And now, there's a review of the whole thing going on, and so on, because as you know, the color of law is a serious matter. You know what I mean? So the color of law is like a policeman comes up to you and says, move over there. Would you move over there? Please move over there. And people, because they see the guns and the tasers and the batons and the uniform, under color of law, that person talking to another person becomes an tacit order because of the intimidation. And people who don't spend their time, as we were saying, like researching this and knowing their rights and having a smartphone recording so that their civil rights are preserved. The smartphone video camera is the only thing that preserves their civil rights, because before you could just be resisting arrest and done in whatever, nobody knows what happens, and of course the body cam footage always goes missing when it's important. So your smartphone camera is the only thing that preserves your civil liberties. Let's make that quite clear. Turn it on. And just record in public. There's no problem recording in public. You can even record a dictaphone or video in this country under this jurisdiction without the knowledge of the other person. It's not permissible in court for most cases, but one-sided dictaphone and secret camera footage for whistleblowing and civil liberties is permitted. You need to ask permission. And the whole thing about I don't like being filmed, which I've seen on your videos, is immaterial. Like, especially when there's a badge number and it's a public servant not behaving in a way that's servile to the public. But the color of law is this notion that people will be intimidated by the blue and by the weapons and by the mentality of deference that is drilled into people who don't want to make trouble, who don't want to be singled out, who don't want to wear the star of being a non-organ donor, and they just don't know the aggro because they have other things in their lives that are more important. And it's for people like you and I to make that, to do the other side of that, which is to be annoying and to create dissent and what was our term? Disruption. But the color of law thing is really interesting, because the power, when you say read out the terms in the statute under which I'm detained, am I being detained? A request is just a person-to-person invitation to treat, like in contract law. Invitation to treat. I put the price in the window. You come in my shop, and then we have a negotiation. You gotta go. Drawing it together. I think we should continue with the Jubilee idea if you're willing to do so. I really want to promote this. I really want to get together a discussion, a debate wider in the New Earthers community, in your viewer community, if we can, about what that might look like, what we might campaign for. I know you're into blockchain and you're a pioneer in Steemit and so on, and that's really interesting. We should talk about censorship resistance and so on another time. But that is a really good. I'd like to go. I'm not an anti-natalist. I'm pro-human. I'm for a pro-human future. But I think we're both for a pro-human future. It depends how you deal with that. But I think we should probably end on the notion that there are things that can be done and things that should be done, and we can have the discussion. And especially when there's other things are not going on so much, when we had this scraping off of the consumer culture, when we don't have places of public resort like pubs and bars and restaurants and cafes and clubs and so on to go to and to get out of our heads, that we can get into this kind of discussion format. And I want to thank you for coming on. Our first special guest, Danny Shine of the Social Experimenter YouTube channel, and I really recommend it. It's wonderful. It's so thrilling and fresh and really funny. And so, Danny, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And let's keep the discussion open, shall we? Death, plague.
Shit.
4 horsemen of the
Get me
apocalypse.
some disinfectant.
No, I'm just so dirty.
Dirty man.